Hey, George, you want to go work in the shop with me? You want to go work in the shop with me, George? Come on, let's go to work. Let's go. Come on. Come on, let's go. You better get your ass in gear. Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go outside. You lazy ass cat. Hey there. My project today is to troubleshoot the brakes on my 1980 Dodge. My wife and I went to Fort Worth the other day and we wound up running around town. And the more I drove it, the worse it got. And what was happening was when I was in stop and go traffic, where I was riding the brake a lot, my pedal would start dropping to the floor. Now I could be going on down the highway and mash the brakes and I got good brakes and it'll stop. But like I said, stop and go, when you're on and off the brakes, the pedal would just drift on down. So in that case, there's a few things we want to do. First thing we want to do is check each wheel for signs of wheel cylinder or calipers leaking. So both my back wheel cylinders are obviously dry. There's no wetness on the backs of the drums or the drums themselves. Next would be the front calipers, and I see no wetness on either one. Another thing it could be would be a leak in a line somewhere, but I don't see any evidence of dripping anywhere underneath the truck. So right now I'm going to go off the assumption that it's not leaking externally. Well, let me backtrack. There's one other place to check. That would be the vacuum line. Pull the vacuum line off and look for any evidence of wetness. You gotta imagine that the first half inch of that hose is going to be dry because the fitting was shoved up in there. But the fitting ought to be wet or some sort of evidence, and it's actually very dry. So I can assume that I'm not leaking out the back of the master cylinder. If it was wet in the vacuum line, it would be bypassing the seal in the back of the master cylinder. Which leads to one last possibility, and that is the master cylinder itself is bypassing internally. To replace the master cylinder is actually a pretty easy job. I'm going to do the lines with these nuts right here, and there's a bolt on each side and back here, and the master cylinder should pull right out. One possible problem I might run into is when you go to undo these nuts, it'll twist the line off if it's old and been sitting for a while. I'll shoot a little bit of lubricant, maybe PB Blast or something in here right before I break it loose. But other than that, I'll pull it off. I'll take the new master cylinder and I will bleed it on a bench, and then I'll install it. To undo your lines is the line wrench. It's got more sides to it basically to grab the nut. These nuts on these kind of lines love to strip. Now, unfortunately, these nuts, I'm pretty certain, are 9/16. All I got's this 14 right here. But 14 is a snug fit onto a 9/16, which is actually even better. Got the old master cylinder out. If it was bypassing into the vacuum chamber, it'd be all wet back here. It's nice and dry. New master cylinder set up in a vise. I'm going to put brake fluid in it. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screwdriver, put it in the end here. I'm going to push the screwdriver in, which will push the plungers in. Before I release the screwdriver and let the plunger come back, I'm just going to stick my fingers over these holes, and it'll keep air from sucking back in, and brake fluid from up top should drop into the chambers. Once I push my screwdriver in, I put my fingers over the holes, ease off the screwdriver, keep air from sucking in. Then from then on, I push a screwdriver in with my fingers gently over the holes, letting the fluid and air escape. And then when I release the screwdriver, I push a little harder on the holes to seal it up. I did that several strokes. Keep in mind that if you push your fingers against these holes really tight and push hard on the screwdriver, you could theoretically inject fluid into your skin. So this may not be the textbook way to do it, but this is just how I do it real quickly and, you know, get a job done and move on down the road. And I put these plugs back in just now. Consider that these lines should be pretty much full of brake fluid all the way down, and air rises. So I just got to bleed a little bit, and just sometimes just by pushing the pedal gently, cracking it just a little bit, letting off, pushing down, just playing with the pedal at different positions and stuff like that, you can work that last bit of air out of it. So let's see what happens. Don't mind my dirty truck. It's just as junky as everything else I got. I'll start without starting the truck. I'll crack a little bit. Just a little bit and let off. Try to get that fluid. Really, I got quite a bit of pedal. Look at that. And then let off, and sometimes I find I gotta take my foot all the way off and rest a minute. I bench bled the master cylinder, so it's pretty much bled. And I didn't open up the lines and no more than taking the nuts off, the lines off the master cylinder. So my system pretty much got fluid in it, except for a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and crank it up and see how she acts with the power booster. Now, I got lots of pedal. I'm really happy with that. Gently let off a little bit without taking it all the way off. See if it wants to drift down on me. So far it feels really good. All right, let's take it for a test drive. She works wonderfully. I'm going to consider her fixed. Thanks for watching my video. What's all that crap I'm supposed to say? Please like and subscribe and tell all your friends and all them good things. I enjoy making these videos, and hopefully I'm helping somebody out. I can't trust you to do nothing right. You're supposed to come to the door and say, I want out now, Dad, now that all the work's done. And this little lazy turd spends his whole daggone time sleeping on the bed. Now you want out. And you too. Okay. Get your asses on outside.